Hello and welcome to another edition of the Scoutcast from Fantasy Football Scout. My name is Joe.
My name is Andy.
And my name is Seb.
Hello, welcome. Myself and Seb have just been boring Andy to tears talking about computers and laptops because I've been having some technical issues today and it's been driving me mad. And I may need to invest in a bit of hardware there. So massively boring, and so ends that conversation. Andy, what is coming on the up on the show?
Yeah, so we're going to have a quick recap of Game Week 28 so far, which has been a little bit of a roller coaster for some of us, but a nice roller coaster for others. We're going to have a look at chip planning. Seb has his triple captainship, which is going to be thinking about and how to use it. And we're also going to be looking at further doubles that are going ahead, which is going to be my section. I'm really excited to talk about that. We're also going to have a little bit of a chat about how lucky and unlucky some flops and successes have been in the last couple of weeks, especially this week. It feels like the variance has been massive, and I know Seb is really motivated to talk about that today, so we're going to have a bit of a chat with that. We're going to look at stats, so best Double Gameweek 29 players, best 30 players as well, so best Game Week 30 players, not the best 30 players, and then the last four, and we're going to look at the whipping boys too, because that's always good to look at. We're going to look at the community squad and see how they're getting on, and then we're going to have some quick fire questions at the end.
Excellent stuff. Welcome all of those that are joining us early in the live chat. Welcome Blake Joe Driblas, who says, awesome, someone else with a red flag. Thank you, Andy. So
600 places.
I know, I saw that. I didn't know which colour arrow to put on your thing, because it was just basically the same, wasn't it?
Yeah. After a -8, it's not too bad.
Hello to Gaza, who has done some excellent musical intros for me and Seb, and it was me and Andy last time, which is very funny. Lee, BJN, Andy, Tim, Rowan, and many more. Do tell your friends, do subscribe, do press the like button, do all of those wonderful things. So speaking of my game week ended up being not do in the end, but I don't go first. It was Seb who has that honour, and what a week it's been for you, Seb. So I'll put your team up on the screen. If you can say your points, so for the benefit of those listening to the podcast, go through your team and the moves you made and how happy you are.
Sure. I got 102 points, which saw me go to just under 7k or so, which, yes, of course I'm happy. That's pretty fortunate as well, which we'll cover a bit more in detail shortly. But to run through the team, I have Dubravka in goal with 3 and a match left. Trent, as everyone does, with 12 points. Captain Reece James with 36 and a match left. Luca Dean with 0 and probably another 0 to come. Kilman, who was my transfer in for Semedo. And I'm kind of super unexcited about Kilman. It was nearly a Spurs player, but I'm not going to get that lucky. It was also nearly Sessegnon as well, so I would have just had another problem.
He may lose his place, according to all
fans. Yeah, exactly. But I mean, I wouldn't have got Doherty, I don't think. So, yeah, I'm not going to worry about that too much. But I got very lucky with Semedo, right? He was, subbed off on 60, kept a clean sheet. And
59 minutes, 59 seconds, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. That was very fortunate. Salah, of course, in midfield. Son, Coutinho with a match left against Leeds. Rafinha, vice-captain, with 1 match left as well. And Jimenez and Broja up front. Both have matches left, but not really expecting anything. And then I bench boosted. So I have Foster, Lacazette, Saka, and Tierney on the bench for Arsenal and Foster.
So, I mean, someone was asking me on Twitter the other day about bench boost. So I think it was Jeremy who lives where I live and is FPL jogger. He was saying, what is my sort of threshold for a bench boost? And I would say 16 has got to be the minimum, because often you think you're going to use some double game weekers and you're going to hope they're going to get at least 4. 20 is like, that's fine, that's really good, I'm happy with that. Above 24, you're thinking whoop-de-doo time, and 40, that's tell your grandkids you've got a 40-point bench boost. But yeah, looking at you, got 22.
Yeah, 22 with maybe a couple to come
with whatever Foster can get to go, which could even be a clean sheet. So that could be
I mean, like
towards 30.
Overall, obviously very pleased with the score. Realistically, the bench boost itself could have been deployed better only after the fact, because I've got Luca Dean, who didn't play. Kilman with 1 may not play. Jimenez came off the bench. So really, if I hadn't played the bench boost and had known those things were going to happen, I could start all 3 Arsenal players and be in a very similar position. So not unhappy to have played it, but probably didn't really come off. But it's hard to complain when your overall score is 3 digits.
Okay, so I'm next. So I got 71. I played my wild card, which was not entirely planned. But nevertheless, I played my wildcard. And so I had a completely new team. Those that can cast their minds back to last week would have seen Dennis and Josh King and all the guys. And basically, it was a very, very, very out-of-date team. And it was limping through. I'd managed to get lots of Liverpool and Arsenal into it through hits. So I was actually on the back of three nice green arrows in a row. 4, actually. So anyway, what I did is I got in a bit of a muddle on Friday. I ended up taking some hits, and I was doing the community team as well, which was also wildcarding, and it all got a bit confusing. And it's a bit like, you know, a bit like at the end of Animal Farm when the animals look to the pigs and the pigs look to the humans, and already they can't tell them apart. And I was looking at the wildcard team, and I could looking at my team, and I definitely could tell them apart. And I thought, right, okay, I've taken hits, I still got a bad team, so I'm just going to press the button. And I felt quite good from that. And suddenly I could get the likes of Rudiger in, James, and Harry Kane as well. So my team I've ended up with is Dubravka in goal, Rudiger, who I captained in a very typical Dullard fashion, James, who's very happy with his points, Alexander-Arnold, the aforementioned Kilman, Ramsey for a bit of enabling, who got his double, Salah, Rafinha, who I flirted with captaining, but ended up on Rudiger, Harry Kane, very pleased, Broja and Adams. I couldn't decide which Saints striker, so I got them both. I've done one, don't know when. And I like that with the Chelsea defenders as well. Couldn't really decide, so I'll just get both and dump one. And on my bench, I've got Ramsdale, Bowen, Davis, and Saka. So I had pretty good bench boost. But it doesn't really. I don't really see that. It's like, oh, I wish I'd bench boost. I couldn't because I'd wildcarded, and if I hadn't wildcarded, I wouldn't have that bench. So I look at that, and I'm in that weird position where I look at that and I sort of don't mind, because there's literally nothing I could have done about that, because it wouldn't have existed if I hadn't have wildcarded. So I'm set up for this week, set up for next week. Got 8 to go, captain to go, set up for 30, and just need a little bit of Leicester, I think, from 30, 31 onwards, and then I should be all set for the final descent. Speaking of the final descent, you've fallen 600 places, Andy, to
I have
to 33k. So I'm in the top 100k, by the way. So this is the first time we're all in the top 100k, and one of us in the top 10k. That's Seb. So yeah, Andy, 33k. Take us through your team and your moves and your glorious bench boost.
So obviously, not obviously, but I went into this week having taken a -8. So I had got rid of Bowen and brought in Rafinha, which turned out to be obviously good because Bowen got injured, only got 1 point. Rafinha was my captain as well. I took out Edouard for Broja, which both of those moves I wanted long term. I wanted Rafinha for the blank, and I just thought like Broja was that perfect player in terms of his price, where I could free up some funds as well. And then I also did Cancelo to Rudiger kind of last minute as well. I'll be honest, I wasn't really that fussed about James. I knew he was a good upside player, but I just thought with his minutes not guaranteed, I'd rather go for Rudiger. 2 fixtures, I thought they're going to get clean sheets, and I just wanted the clean sheets, basically. So, yeah, I went with him because I wanted him after game week 30 as well. So it was a -8, but it was preparing me for the next couple of weeks. Most likely going to roll going into next week. So I thought, actually, it's a -8 actually spread across 3 weeks, as long as nothing goes really badly. Now, I bench boosted. So my team is Ramsdale, Rudiger, Trent and Robertson, Salah, Rafinha captain, Ramsey, Martinelli, Saka, Kane and Broja. And then my bench was Sanchez, Mope, Aït-Nouri and Dean. Now,
it's 2 points, isn't it?
Stop. Hang on, Joe. Hang on. I didn't put as much thought into my bench positions because I was bench boosting. So originally, I had the 2 Arsenal boys on my bench.
Well, he's better.
And then all of a sudden, it looks a bit better, doesn't it? You know, I've got Saka and Martinelli, and it's 20 plus points. But as it is, I saved it as Aït-Nouri and Dean on my bench. Aït-Nouri didn't play, Dean didn't play, Mope got 1 point, and Sanchez got 1 point. So on the face of it, it's 2 points on my bench boost. But actually, it meant that I didn't have to think about which Arsenal players to bench, because I would have benched one of them, probably Martinelli. And so I've got those Arsenal boys. I didn't have to worry about it. So actually, 72 points with a -8. I've got a 600k red. I thought it was going to be a much bigger red, especially after that first day where everybody around my players seemed to be doing well. So
was that 600?
Fairly happy.
600 red, not 600k.
Not 600k, sorry, no, just 600 red. So actually, I'm actually quite happy. I've got players left to play. I'm all set for next week. I've got 8 doublers that I want as well. So I'm in a good place, I feel. I was expecting a red arrow this week after a -8, and with the bench boost going so badly on paper. So I'm fairly happy. Yeah,
so I mean, like in Seb's team, his bench boost, you've got Luca Dean in your main squad, but you've got all those lovely points on the bench. So could have been the other way, as Andy was saying. It's just
for sure. Like I said, like I don't think. I mean, the way to look at it is all 15 players, right? It doesn't actually matter.
Of course.
Because as well, like I wildcarded.
Yeah.
What, a week was it? A week ago, something like that. I free hit last week, wildcarded the week before. Like I planned for this squad, so it kind of doesn't matter. Andy did similar. So it's about the overall score, and I think I could have played mine in a better week. But like I said, it's hard to complain when you've done well overall.
Yeah. I mean, I think the template bench boost, if there is one, has got probably Saka or Martinelli or both, but definitely Saka. It's probably got a double goalkeeper, so a Dubravka or something, or maybe a good single one like Ramsdale. So I think it's just these Brighton lads are the main difference. My team letting the side down at the moment, but yes, they could be. Bringing us joy next week if my team can lose against the likes of Harry Kane, which I don't want them to. I want Harry Kane to score a hat-trick and Spurs lose 4-3, which is actually massively achievable for Spurs. So fingers crossed. So let's have a look at what we're going to look at now. So before we look at the fixtures, so this sort of part of the season, we're having recaps of the fixtures quite a bit just to see where we're at. So we're going to look at the fixtures without the doubles that are going to come. And then there's a bit of fixture gazing, a bit of the hive mind, inspired by Planet FPL's James as well, has been coming up with likely scenarios. So both of you are going to talk about that and talk about chips as well coming for those. But in the meantime, Seb wanted to talk about, I've got in my notes here, it just says lucky and unlucky gits, but actually you mean overperformers and underperformers. So
same thing, I suppose.
Same thing. So this is just for the current game week, because you noticed there was quite a lot of luck and bad luck. Can I say that? Overachieving or underachieving? Anyway, I'll let you take it away, and you just tell me.
I mean, that's a nice segue, because I guess the first thing to mention is, very broadly, there are probably 2 types of luck in FPL. The first one being, I don't know, picking a player who scores 3 worldies in a match and scores a hat-trick, and you kind of predicted that happening and you got lucky because of that outcome. The other one is probably the best example is that triple captain Mane from a few years ago, where he got injured in the first minute, or Luca Dean, he's got COVID, right? He would have started at left back. That's a separate type of luck, something else we don't have control over and can only really just work with and deal with what we're handed out. So I think both those things were probably at play this week, maybe more the former. And there's a few players I wanted to highlight.
Okay.
Did you have
overperformers first then?
Yeah, go for it. Okay. So obviously overperformers, we've looked at this before on a longer sample size. Longer, that doesn't make sense. Larger sample size. This is just for last week. So obviously the numbers here take with a pinch of salt, but the reason we use this is to show that, on average, what were the players expected to do from what they did on that day, and what did they end up actually doing? So, as we can see, Danny Ings right there at the top with the biggest difference between his expected goal involvement and his actual goal involvement. De Bruyne's there too. Obviously, the interesting one to all of us is Reece James. That's the player I'd like to cover first. So, I had Reece James. I captained him. I captained him with literally 3 minutes to go. And a bit like Harry Kane on the free hit last week, who I captained instead of Weghorst, I could probably sit here and tell you there was lots of clever thought that went into it, but I'm pretty sure I recorded on this channel not being sure between Kane and Weghorst. So, I'm not going to claim it was genius. Similar this week. It was on Rafinha originally, and I think it basically just came down to I wasn't sure how Rafinha would be used by Jesse Marsch. Turns out he played well in the end, but if we talk about Leeds, we'll come to why I think that is. In the first half, he wasn't great, and I didn't think the tactic maybe suited him, so went to Reece James. But Reece James obviously was less expected to play the minutes, and I think that's probably what you went Rudiger captain, and he similarly avoided James, and I think that's a reasonable thing to do, because if you thought, okay, I want to get a double Chelsea defender for these weeks, you get Rudiger, because he is more certain to play. We all know that. So because we got James, we were going for upside rather than minutes. We thought in whatever minutes he does play, he can get more points.
Yeah, that's why I got him in. I thought if he's on the pitch against those two teams, I'm gonna get something. I don't know what, but I'm gonna get something.
Exactly. So for me, then that's that second part of luck there that we spoke about a minute ago, which is when we're trying to predict what someone's going to do on the pitch, what are we actually saying? And I think this is where expected numbers are really useful. Because I'm saying, okay, I think the team Chelsea are playing are weak down their left-hand side. I think they're bad going forward. So an attacking right wing-back who might keep a clean sheet, might get some assists, might get some chances to score, sounds good to me. Or did he get those chances, and did he create chances? He had a XGI, which is shots and potential assists in there, of 0.2, which isn't great. No. It means, say, in 5 matches, he would be expected to get 1 return. In this match, it was basically, a 1 in 5 chance of returning, and he returned twice. Mm-hmm. So I think on the face of it, it's fair to say that was fortunate. Of course, you could argue that Reece James is a great finisher, or he creates really good chances for good teammates, or something like that. But if that was true, if that's what you were predicting, you would captain Reece James every week, because if he was able to overperform his numbers by that much, he'd be the best player in the league. Chelsea also conceded 0.885 XG themselves. So while that was the 3rd best this week, it's not massively impressive. They weren't expected to concede 1 goal, just under. But maybe they were a little fortunate. So I think here, while the logic of picking James was sound, I don't actually think that played out. I think he either got lucky or we got lucky because we picked him on a day where, the shot he had, which was from a tight angle, it was close to goal, but it was a tight angle, lots of players in the way, was kind of fortunate to go in. Maybe Pope was unsighted, so maybe it was a slightly better chance than the numbers say. And, we don't want to focus too much on just single match numbers. But I think it's fair to say that he got rather fortunate there. There's some other players as well, but before we do that, I'd love to throw it over to you two just to see what you think about that.
Well, I've already explained about James. It's a classic Dullard move for me. Get him in because I think I'm going to get a return, but I'm not quite there enough to captain him. I'll go for the safety of Rudiger. So that's me. For you, you went for that high upside move with James. But for me, I saw the game. I've seen him in a few of these games like this where he's just the best player. He simply is that good. And he's not that good every match, and he's injured for some matches. But I think if he's on the pitch against a bad team, I think I'm going to get an attacking return. There's not too many defenders I think that about. Cancelo, Alexander-Arnold, Robertson, but not that many. But yeah, Andy, what do you think? Because you avoided getting James. Was that just because you'd taken too many hits so far, or you just didn't feel he'd play?
No, my biggest reason was because I wanted the security of Rudiger. So I wanted somebody that I knew would play the week after because of my team setup as well. I wanted somebody that I knew would. My biggest thing with James, I think everybody was going to go for James if they knew he was going to play the minutes. That's the biggest thing for me. Like, he would have been one of the most bought defenders, even amongst casual players that don't look into stats and things. He would have been if it were the fact that we knew he was playing. And I just thought he was a player that's come back from quite a bad injury as well, and he was coming back, and it was. I think even Tuchel said, didn't he? Oh, I was worried that he played 70 minutes. So I thought he was only going to play 20 minutes, and to me it just screamed of. This is a high upside, high risk play. And if people went for it and it paid off, then fair enough. But for me, I feel like you have to weigh up your risky plays with your non-risky plays as the season goes on. And depending on who you are as a manager, you might go for riskier plays than other people. I like doing kind of half and half most of the way through the year. And I just thought to myself, actually, I can see 2 clean sheets. There's every chance Reece James doesn't do anything. And I'd rather have the security of Rudiger going forwed. Basically, that was my thinking moving forward. And I'm happy Rudiger got a clean sheet, but Reece James obviously smashed it.
But effectively, like I said, you can disagree with my hypothesis in terms of what are we trying to do when we predict things, but I believe we're trying to predict chances, not finishing. So you effectively went, Rudiger will play more minutes. Well, he did. James could have got subbed off on 59. He got subbed off on 72 or something. Rudiger played the whole match. You also said because of that, maybe I don't think James has enough upside to make up for me. Well, James was expected to get, 20% of a return? And again, I know a single match, blah, blah, blah. And a good way to test that sort of logically, I guess, is if Reece James now plays 5 matches, gets 0.2 in every single match, and only gets 1 return, which he got last week, then you would say that it's entirely deserved. But in every single week that he gets 0.2, it would be fortunate for him to return, if that makes sense. So, of course, there's a bunch of variants in there, and we got lucky for it to happen this week. And that's the main thing, right? It happened in the week when lots of people went for it, and then they doubled it by captaining that player. I think your assessment, Andy, was just as solid as everyone's who went for James. We just got super lucky and you didn't.
Yeah, and one of my biggest things, and I've always done this, and it's probably, Joe, you probably know it. I used to watch a lot of Jay Eggersdorf ages ago on YouTube, and I used to love it. And one of the things he always used to say was, don't get players where when the team sheets come out, you're worried about whether they're going to be on the team sheet. And I was just spooked by the fact I thought Reece James wasn't going to play. I thought he was going to play maybe one of the games, or maybe get subbed off early both times. And I didn't like the idea of that, and just like the security of Rudiger. And I felt like maybe there were a few other risks in my team. And with playing bench boost, I thought I don't want to have a player not playing. I want everybody to try and be playing as much as possible. So it's just the route I went down. And don't get me wrong, in the grand scheme of things, yes, James obviously really did well this week. But across 4 or 5 weeks, you never know. It might even out. You will never know what's going to happen as the future goes on. But yeah, at the moment, it's felt like I did something wrong. But obviously, I don't think I did.
No, I saw you comments on Twitter, and it reminded me of how the game weeks played out during all the lockdown, not during the lockdowns as such. Yeah, there's sort of empty stadiums where we almost like a match every day kind of thing. And of course, some days you're going to miss out on those players that it seems like everyone else has got, and then the next day, those managers are going to miss out on the other players that you've got who are actually going to play. So yes, you missed out on Reece James on the Saturday, but on the Sunday, all your Arsenal players come in and score pretty much the same, collectively. So that's quite a. It's just the way it is. But yeah, I think Seb's quite right to point out all these overperformers, and we'll come to underperformers in a bit as well, because this week was particularly stark, I think. I mean, that Reece James one, particularly with expected goal involvement of a tenth of a goal, and he got those huge returns, and same with Ings as well, pretty massive returns. But there's some other players on this list as well. I mean, you asked me to put Coutinho in, and I looked at Coutinho and I thought, well, he's sort of neither unlucky nor unlucky. So why did you want him in? Because he's got expected goal involvement of 1.37,
sure.
And obviously did better than that.
So just before that, the other thing that you mentioned there that I think is interesting to say as well is that when someone goes and gets a goal and an assist, a brace, a hat trick, they're very likely to overperform their numbers in that week. Because that's kind of the point, right? They've done well to score 3 goals. It's unlikely they got 3 chances that were good enough to score 3 goals, so they've performed well or they've overperformed. So we would always expect a player that's returning quite a bit in a week to overperform. So that's not a crime or anything. It's just interesting to note. It's more about when you pick that player, not if they should have got those points, I guess. And then so on Coutinho, like you say, he was probably, by definition, he's overperformed here, but not by a huge amount. I think the interesting thing, though, is that when watching the match, and I thought this just like everyone else, you probably went, how has he not had 4 goals here? He got a goal and an assist, but how's he not got so much more? Mm-hmm. But then you look at the numbers, and the numbers, as you've just said, Joe, say that he probably got roughly what he deserved, maybe a little bit more. So you go, well, how come, I thought he could have scored 4? And I think that's a trap we often fall into. And you hear it when commentators talk about a match. If someone has 4 shots, they go, oh, he could have scored 4 today. Well, he could have done, but to score 100% of your shots is pretty unlikely. So someone like Coutinho having those good chances, we don't expect him to put all of those chances away. Even someone like Harry Kane doesn't do that, although he's in great form finishing at the moment. And then I think with Coutinho, what really happened is he missed the easy ones and scored the hard one. So it ended up evening out, even though when we watched it, it probably looked like, because he scored the hard one, we put that in the bank, we go, cool, we've got that. But what if he got the easy one as well? But that's not how it works, of course. And so while I think Coutinho also a very good pick and did well, it's just an interesting point to mull over alongside the Reece James thing, which is more on the variance or luck side, if you like.
And what about Fraser as well? So Fraser was a player that we tipped last week because he was he was top amongst midfielders over the last 4 matches in terms of expected goal involvement.
Yeah.
And then he delivered, but he sort of over-delivered. But nevertheless, he was, I mean, we were touting him last week, lots of people were, so he was clearly expected to deliver. So why is he considered an overperformer?
Simply because he returned more than he was expected, as you can see there.
Yeah.
Was it 0.87, but got 2 returns, I believe, so overperformed by 1.13. But I think that just falls into the category of, if you deliver a couple of returns in a week, you are likely to have overperformed because every chance is you had a good day finishing, or someone had a good day finishing your chances. He's an interesting one too, because obviously his goal comes from a scenario not of his making. He did brilliant to get up there, and as your numbers showed last week, him being in those positions is probably why he has those good numbers. But if that had gone in first time or had bounced slightly differently, he doesn't get his goal. It was a relatively fortunate goal in terms of the way the ball fell and the way the game was being played. But in the numbers, it looks entirely expected. So just an interesting, difference there, which over time is smoothed out, but in a single match can show that, maybe looking at the numbers and watching the match show slightly different things, but neither of them have to disagree with each other. They're just talking about it differently.
Let's move on to underperformers, which is essentially, I'm not going to put the goals imminent table on later because essentially this tells a similar story. This is those who are sort of have got the underlying stats to merit returns, so it's anticipated they will do. Obviously that looks at last 4 matches, but this is just looking at the last week really. And I think it's particularly important for your team, Seb, Leeds, because Rafinha was heavily captained by those that got him in, but didn't deliver. But I thought, well, basically, I wish I'd captained him now because his next game he could be hauling. So anyway, here's the underperformers list, and you can run through some of the key stats and key people on this. And I should just say, for the benefit of those listening to the podcast, Rafinha is top of this, top underperformer, game week 28.
Sure. So, I mean, we can talk about Leeds in a moment as well, if you like. Remind me of that. But for this table, Rafinha's really the standout. Everyone else there is whatever. I think Rafinha's the important one this week. And I think, in the simplest possible terms, what this says is that Andy was right to captain him. He has very similar numbers to Coutinho and Fraser. He's in between the two. If you lined all 3 up, he's in the middle. Both those 2 got 2 returns. Rafinha didn't. Rafinha basically missed a chance that Havertz scored for a Reece James assist. It was, a tap in on the line, maybe a bit scrambly. Schmeichel made a great save, or Rafinha didn't quite finish it well. But, who finishes well from 6 yards out? You just put your foot on it, don't you? So that was incredibly unfortunate.
I might have to put
and
my
as
cat
the numbers
out
say there,
second, it's crept in.
Sorry?
I'm just going to put my cat out. It's crept in to my office.
I've got. I don't know if you can see it. I've got my cat down now. I've put some bedding on the floor. So I say my cat.
Just go over the door for my cat. So carry on. I'll be back in a sec.
Sure. Running out. Joe's bored already. So yeah, I think basically, if you believe my proposal earlier that when we're playing fantasy, we're not trying to predict, say, finishing as much as we're trying to predict basically will a player get a chance to finish. You did a good job. Rafinha did indeed get a chance to finish, and he messed it up. But all you can do is put the captain on a player you think is going to get the chance. If we knew Rafinha was a terrible finisher or something, fine. But I don't think we have the evidence for that. I don't really have too much more to add there, apart from some tactical lead stuff. But I don't know if you want to comment on that first.
Well, yeah, I mean, tactically, what difference did you make? Should I be happy as a Rafinha owner? Should I keep him beyond this?
Sure. So, I mean, I'd love to explore this in more detail. Maybe write an article or something on it. But obviously, we've got one match so far from Jesse March. So we have to be careful with our conclusions. We knew he would play we thought he might play the 4-2-2-2. I wouldn't say it was certain. One thing that I was speculating beforehand is this would actually make Rafinha worse because he would be playing as one of these sort of half 10s, half wingers inside. And what we saw under Bielsa is that Rafinha really, really does well when he can isolate the fullback. We know he's a brilliant dribbler. He's got great ball control. He likes a little bit of space he can create for himself. That is not what he's going to get in this formation. And in the first half, he didn't. I think in the first half, he was not poor, but relatively quiet. And I think there's a slight red herring here with his numbers there. That chance he got, which was saved by Schmeichel, was in the second half. I think you could look at that and go, oh, Rafinha's now playing as one of these sort of number 10s. He got some good numbers. He should have scored. That means he's a better option. In the second half, we actually we kept that formation, but Rafinha started playing a bit further wide, and he got a little bit more opportunity to get on the ball, to do a bit more things like he did under Bielsa. Obviously, that chance came, right in the middle of the goal, so it doesn't really matter where he came from for that. But I think we have to be careful to say he's a better asset now. I don't think he is. I don't think we know. I think there's a chance he's worse. I think there's a chance he's better.
Okay.
But what made the difference is possibly the tactical shift in the second half. We were slightly better for that first half of the second half. And that's where his change came from. There's also some other players to look at as well, but maybe that's best for another time. Harrison was good. I think Rodrigo could be the real winner out of all of this, especially if we're looking for forwards.
Okay, so Andy, Rafinha's your captain?
Yeah.
So you feel confident now?
To be honest, he's still the reason I captain him, the reason I brought him in, and obviously kind of for a hit, I guess, is I just thought, despite who the manager was going to be, he's the talisman for that team in terms of he is that X factor, isn't he? He's the one that's going to change things, and even if Leeds are poor for an entire game, he's the one that can all of a sudden get the assist or get the goal. And I know a lot of people in the chat have been mentioning about the fact that he might be off a few set pieces now, which obviously dents him a little bit. But I just thought moving forward with a new manager, they're going to lean on their star players, aren't they? And Rafinha is obviously that star player for Leeds. So I felt good getting him in. I thought the double was nice. And obviously he plays in the Blank Gameweek and Gameweek 30 as well. So I didn't hesitate. I wanted him in my team. It's just been unlucky how it's gone at the moment so far, but you never know. He gets a return in the second game, and like Bruno did for loads of us in that week, and all of a sudden it doesn't look like too bad a decision. But obviously at the moment he hasn't got his return yet, but he could easily get it in the second game.
And don't get me wrong, I wasn't saying Rafinha's the poor option. I just think there's an interesting tactical thing to look at there. And like you say, by what we could be 2 days' time, Rafinha could get a brace, James could get subbed on the 59th minute after conceding, and it's all much of a muchness. We're halfway through a week.
Amongst the other players on this underperformance, it's a pretty grim list, really. Unless people really want to get Fred, McNeil, Zaha, Mateta, Jacob Murphy, Firpo, Diaz, Dennis. But there's a couple of names that are worth talking about. Foden, always in the mix. Could have got a bit more. Underperforming. Just as we go forwards and we'll look at the fixtures, and if there's a double game week, it's going to be very tempting to go for Foden because he does get the minutes if he's fit and not on the naughty step. And the other names I want to mention is Adams. So we did well recommending Reece James, we did well recommending Fraser last week, and the attacker that we really plugged was Che Adams, and he was to be considered unlucky, underperforming. In that, there were chances in that game. I think it was, I think him rather than Brozier was the one who, if they were going to score, it would have been him. So hopefully that bodes well for his second game, and indeed his next game as well. Because I'm going to play him definitely in game week 29 against Watford, I think it is.
It is.
Yeah.
So
I have Brozier because he's cheaper. His numbers over the season were better. They're now about the same. Adams has been better recently. And I'll stop the banging this drum in a second. But I guess this shows that he wasn't far off deserving a return, as it were.
Yeah.
And that's all we're trying to predict. You can, of course, predict that someone is a good finisher, like Harry Kane or Heung-min Son. But if they don't get any chances to show off that finishing, it doesn't matter how good they are at finishing.
Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put the fixtures up because we're going to talk about a bit more about Game Week 29 and Blank Game Week 30 and beyond. But I'm just going to put these fixtures up, and this is not factoring in potential double game weeks that could be on the horizon. And then Andy and Seb are going to talk about some of the hive mind that's been going on about thinking when they might be and when we might use chips. So sort of without thinking of chips and doubles, this is just sort of blanketly, these are broadly the teams to invest in because broadly outside of any double game weeks they have, they've got good fixtures. And Arsenal are top. This is why I went triple Arsenal. I've gone down to double Arsenal now, but because I think I can dip my toe into more Arsenal at some point. But I do think double or triple Arsenal is looking very key for the coming weeks. They've got Leicester, Liverpool in this double. Game week 30 they play Villa, and then they've got this nice run. They've got Crystal Palace, Brighton and Southampton. They could have another double within that. They may not. Manchester United and West Ham follow, and then they end the season with Leeds, Newcastle, Everton. Could be some doubles around that time as well for them. Tottenham, similarly, good bunch of fixtures. Manchester United and Brighton away next up in game week 29. Then they've got West Ham, Newcastle, Villa, Brighton, Brentford, Leicester. They've got a Liverpool game week 36, but then finish the season with Burnley, Norwich, and of course whatever else they've got to rearrange in that time. Leicester, ton of fixtures to rearrange, but they're good anyway. Even if they didn't, they've got Brentford, Crystal Palace, Newcastle, Villa, Everton, Watford and Southampton among their next few fixtures. Liverpool as well. Doesn't matter with fixtures with them, but they have good fixtures. So Salah could be a good captaincy shout. Obviously in game week 29 when they play Brighton and Arsenal, but you're looking at game week 31, they play Watford, game week 33 against Villa, Everton, game week 34. You never know what's going to happen in the Merseyside derby. Everton could be good for that. Newcastle, game week 35, Southampton, game week 37, and of course any doubles possibly, or indeed blanks, who knows. But we'll come to that in a sec. Brentford looking quite key as well for the odd match, and Tony suddenly we always thought he'd be quite good this season, but he's sort of morphing into what he should have been, really, a cheap, good, effective striker. He's got Burnley, Watford, Southampton. What? Seb's, what?
Laughing at Seb when you said about Tony becoming an option. He's going.
Well,
I've genuinely thought about it. I just 2 penalties.
Well,
non-penalty XG.
Okay,
which is fine. They will get penalties, but
in the absence of any other viable strikers, not any other, but very few viable strikers. Meanwhile, teams not to invest in, and this will come as a shock because Everton have an absolute hatful of fixtures to come, but lots of double game weeks, but their fixtures around that are awful. Liverpool, Chelsea, Leicester, Arsenal is pretty grim, and we saw how easily Spurs dispatched them. Crystal Palace, not a good team to invest in either. They got Leeds, Southampton, Watford before the end of the season, but City, Arsenal, Leicester, Manchester United, not great. Watford, well, we all know about them. We've all had enough of Watford, and I think the sooner we eradicate them from our teams, totally the better. But they've got terrible fixtures, so they're a terrible team. Southampton, interesting. I don't know about Southampton because I want to keep Brozier, I think, because he's just a cheap, handy striker. But nevertheless, after Watford and then Leeds, and indeed they have Crystal Palace and Brentford, they've got some awful fixtures as well. Chelsea, Arsenal, Liverpool and Leicester in there. So that's the extent of it, really. Teams to invest in general. But Andy, the FPL Schofield put something up, didn't he? And some other people have.
He did.
And this was based on Planet FPL James's theories around TV scheduling and possible double game weeks. So I'm going to put up an image that FPL Schofield put up, and if you can sort of benefit the podcast listeners as well, sort of what does this all mean for us in terms of planning for doubles and blanks?
Yeah, so I'm going to say massive caveat at the beginning. This is obviously all theory still. So there is a very, very good chance that the things could fall like this, but it is still with a little bit of a pinch of salt. Now, as you said, FPL Schofield based this on James from Planet FPL. And I won't lie, James has been absolutely smashed it this year in terms of predicting where things are going to fall. So this could very well happen. Now, the major thing that obviously we have against everybody else, so people that watch content, the thing that they have against everybody else is knowing when double game weeks and blank game weeks are going to happen and preparing for them weeks in advance. Now, if this falls exactly like this, we have got a massive benefit from this compared to other people. Now, for people that are listening on the pod, I'll just go through what we've got here. So this is where we think everybody will blank, where we think they're going to double. We're thinking it's going to be a double game week 31 or 32, where Burnley and Everton both get a double game week. In game week 33, we think it's going to be a big double game week and a blank game week. We think it's Wolves and Leeds that are going to have a blank game week in that one, which is interesting because obviously quite a few of us have Wolves and Leeds. But a big double game week for Arsenal, Brighton, Burnley, Leicester, United and Newcastle. Then in double game week 34 or 35, we think there's going to be Everton and Watford again. We notice Everton crop up quite a bit. Double game week 36 is going to be the massive double game week where Arsenal, Villa, Burnley, Chelsea, Palace, Everton, Leicester, Liverpool, Man City, Southampton, Spurs, and West Ham all potentially have a double game week. And then in game week 37, West Ham are likely to have a blank, and then we're going to have double game weeks for Chelsea, Leeds, Leicester, Norwich, and Wolves. Now, that's a lot of information all at once. If you're watching this on a pod, it is worth either going on Twitter and have a look at what Schofield did on his actual tweet, or watching this Scoutcast back to actually have a look at the visual.
I pinned it on my. I think I have anyway. Hopefully, I pinned it, and if I haven't, I will quickly pin it. But I pinned it to my my Twitter feed, so go and have a look at that. Feeds on the thing, FF_Scout_Joe. Have a look there. Got FPL Schofield's work.
Now, the biggest takeaways for me are obviously we've got to look at this in terms of how we're going to use our chips going forward if we've still got chips. Double game week 33 and double game week 36 look like the ones that are best to attack for me personally. I think if you've got free hit left, bench boost left, whatever it is you've got left, those are good ones to attack. I think the other thing you've got to look at as well is just these teams that are going to get these double game weeks. You know, Leicester are cropping up in a lot of these. Leicester have got a potential double game week in 33. They've got one in 36 and potentially in 37 as well. Chelsea look like they've got some double game weeks that we could attack later on. So they're going in 36 and 37. But also, and obviously we've mentioned this already, Everton are cropping up all over the place here because they've got so many fixtures that they still need to play. So they're potentially going to have a double game week in 31, 32, maybe in 34, 35, and then another one in 36. And it's just having that in the back of your head and thinking to yourself, I need to invest in these players because they've just got so many fixtures compared to everybody else. It's very, very interesting to think about the fact that City might have a double game week in 36 because they are the team that could potentially have won the league by then. You never know. Obviously, Liverpool are now pushing them closer, but they're probably the last team we wanted to have a late double game week. You would have wanted them to have that a little bit earlier. And obviously, the fact Chelsea have two lovely fixtures. They've got Wolves and Leicester potentially in 36, and then they've got Man United and Leeds in 37, which is, I mean, you can imagine that people are going to really start piling in on them. Looking forward to this. I mean, Seb, you've obviously got your triple captain left. I've got my free hit left, and I was originally looking at game week 36, but I'm already looking there and thinking, whoa, actually, I'm going to own a lot of those players anyway. So is free hit really the best option there, and should I be targeting something else? So what are you looking at in terms of your forward? I know we've even got double game weeks this week, haven't we? So what are you looking at? Because if it does all fall like this, there's so many opportunities moving forward, isn't there?
Yeah, well, I've got the free hit, which I guess 33 or 36 makes sense. Maybe that would depend on how many Wolves or Leeds players I have in 33, not sure. And then the triple captain, which we can look at in a bit of detail in a moment. There's the obvious Salah option this week, but are there possibly alternatives later? You know, a Man City in 36 with, say, Newcastle and West Ham looks real tempting. But one thing I'd like to throw into there is, if I've read other people's interpretations on Twitter correctly, before double game week 36, there are the Champions League semi-finals in the midweek. And of the weekend of 36, I believe it is the FA Cup final. I think that's right. So there's every chance someone like City might actually not end up with a double there, or end up with, you know, say a double spread over different days, or have a much more arguably important fixture in the Champions League in very close proximity. We know that really City can put out just as strong a squad either way. But for FPL, you know, me and you just suffered with Sterling and Mahrez. There's every chance that could happen all over again. So while if I had, like, say, a free hit is basically fine because we can make a good judgment call and have a bench. A wild card, which some people have, and, you know, I'm doing well at the moment, but that's because I've just played all these chips. I fully expect to drop 10 or 20k when people who are going to wild card in 34 or something play their chips. But those people will be well set up. I think it's the triple captain, which is the interesting one, and 36 worries me from that point of view. If I go and triple captain KDB, I'd bring him in just for that, and then he gets rested, I might feel a little bit silly.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the exactly what you're saying about the rotation risks around 36, especially the FA Cup teams. I think we have to play it by ear. As I suspect, it won't land well for me. If in the double 33, which could be a bigger one, I was well stocked with players with 2 fixtures, I would use that. I'd be tempted to use it then. But I think I'm just going to hold out until game week 36, because chances are I'm going to have a whole bunch of players. It looks like it could be Arsenal, for example. I'll have players there. They are not rotating much. They're not really involved in anything else. Same with a lot of the other teams. So sort of the lesser teams, they could be fighting for their Premier League survival. They could be like Spurs could be fighting for a top 4 finish. Liverpool could be have their heads elsewhere with other cup competitions, and same could say for Chelsea, and definitely for City, maybe even Leicester as well. So virtually all of the teams there, they could be absolutely huge, but they could just not. They could not play. So I'm just going to hold out and see where it lands. But that's all I've got left. If I think what's interesting about this is if you've got a free hit left in game of, and you were looking to use in game week 30, if you can hold off, if you've got about 8 players and they're quite good players, and you've got a good captain in Kane or a Leicester player, it's possibly worth holding it off and going for the upside of these others. And I think that could be interesting. But if you're just not very well planned for game week 30 at all, we've only got 2 or 3 players and they're not good ones, then use it then. But I think that for me would be the main takeaway. I think.
I'd just love to add on. Oh, after you, Andy.
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to say, I think as well, it really highlights for me how big Leicester assets are going to turn after game week 30. I mean, I had it in the back of my head already. Like, I knew that Leicester and Chelsea were the teams to target after game week 30, but I'm just looking at, like, if it double game week 33, if they've got Newcastle and Everton, and then they've got double game week 36 where they've got Everton and Chelsea, and then in double game week 37 they can have Watford and Norwich. Like, you're going to be wanting double, but I'm looking at it thinking, who do I even get for Leicester, really? Who can I get that I can trust? And that's the big one for them, because like Everton and Burnley, you're not going to want their assets, really. Whereas Leicester are the ones you think, I want someone, but who do I get? And like Vardy, Daka and Iheanacho, he can't really decide between which one of those he wants to play up top. And obviously Vardy's a bit injured and needs to be rotated. Maddison, it doesn't seem to be fit at the moment or able to play enough games in a row. And you're then just looking and thinking, who do I get? Harvey Barnes? Like, do we get Harvey Barnes, a winger that's going to get rotated as well? So I think if you can nail which one you're going to get, I think you're going to be holding them till the end of the season then. So they're big for me.
I was just going to say, we just had a couple of comments in the live chat about the audio, saying there's some popping going on. Now, I'm not sure how to address that, to be honest, and I don't know why that is. So hopefully that can be rectified. I think all our internet's all fine. There seems to be a lot of juice there in the internet world. So there's something going on with the audio and the system that we're using. So hopefully that will rectify itself. But yes, do carry on.
Yeah, I mean, I agree on Leicester. I want to find an asset that works, but I don't know if I will. Maddison, Vardy, Barnes, maybe all either rotation risks, or I just never like Barnes as an FPL asset. I think every now and again he looks great, mostly against Leeds. I think he's scoring against us 4 times. Leeds. Yeah, but he doesn't have us to play anymore. But I mean, if you look at his numbers, there's just always so many more better options. And I think when he plays well, he looks really, really good, which is obviously very tempting. So then you'd maybe say it's their defence, but their defence has been horrible. So, and the attacking wing backs keep getting injured or rotated. So I don't know, maybe an Amity and stick him on the bench, maybe a Schmeichel. I was, before Spurs' performance last night, I was tempted by Vardy. Not that I should, look into Spurs beating Everton heavily too much. Before last night, they were tempting, but not as tempting. And now they've played a team that they just destroyed, and they played Leeds. So still one to think about. But the thing I wanted to mention a moment ago is just on game week 30 and the free hit. I think I've got 8, 9, maybe 10 with the transfer players for that. I don't think it's just about the numbers, though. I think you mentioned this, Joe. It's about the quality of those players. So if you only had, say, 8 players, but that is Kane and Son, and even another Spurs player, you're great. If you only have 8 players and you have no Spurs player, maybe you need to be getting 10 players and 2 of those should be Spurs players. I'm not saying literally, but it's not just about the number. It's about the quality of player you have, and particularly a captain option.
Yeah. Let's look at matters to hand with Double Gameweek 29. So I've got some more stats here, and this is looking at the best players who have a double over the last 4 matches. I'll put this on the screen here for the benefit of those listening on the podcast. We have Salah top, as you would expect. He was expected to be involved in nearly 5 goals. Kane, just behind him, expected to be involved in nearly 4 goals. Then Mane. So if for some reason you've got Salah and Mane, and if you can, that could be a lucrative way of tackling this double game week. Then Lacazette, the new assist maestro for Arsenal. Son is expected to have scored 2.5 goals. Reguilon, when he's on the pitch, looks dangerous, as proved. I think it took him about 3 minutes to score a couple of days ago or yesterday.
Can I just jump in and say, I know everyone is loving Doherty at the moment, but if Sessegnon's out for any period of time, I'd be super tempted by Reguilon just because in theory he doesn't have competition. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, I had Reguilon for ages, but I just dropped him because it was just, I just didn't know whether he was going to play or not. But yes, if Sessegnon's out, then that obviously helps his minutes. But yeah, people have got Doherty. In true dullard fashion, I've gone for Ben Davis because of security of starts. So I've avoided all those exciting players. Meanwhile, also on this list, players to get in: Fraser, if he's overcome his knock. Alexander-Arnold, we all know about. Kulusevski is a good asset. He is starting to appear on this table. Wasn't for a while, but his expected goal involvement is relatively high, especially because he's 6.1. Saka, we know about. Odegaard, and I've included, and Jota's also on there. Last 4 matches, I've included Rondon on here because he actually fits onto he is actually in the stats behind Odegaard and just above Diogo Jota, but no one's going to get Rondon, and I'm not saying to anyone get Rondon. He's here to show that he is the best asset Everton have, and that's the sort of thing we should sit with us when we consider Everton players. That Rondon's the best. There we go.
And I'm gonna end up with DCL. I know I am.
Gross at Brighton is the best in terms of expected goal.
I thought you were just describing what Seb just said.
Yeah, Rondon, gross. DCL, that's gross. And gross, that could be gross. But gross is 5.7. Cheeky differential if you fancy taking a punt on Brighton scoring a goal or 2 during this double game week. So I think he could be the best option. So out of this lot here, I've got, Salah and Kane. I've got Saka, Alexander-Arnold. I think that's about it. A bit of the boring equivalent of Reguilon, Ben Davis. So I think some people who've got maybe Bowen might be tempted to Kulusevski. We've got him in the community team, which we'll come to. But that could be good. So yeah, what do you two think of this list? Any players that you haven't got and want, or any players on this list where you think, ooh, that's good?
Yeah, there's a few players I'd love to talk about. I say a few, there's 2 actually. I think players like Salah and Kane and Son as well, I think are absolutely fine. I think Kulusevski's someone that I am genuinely looking at getting in, mainly because I can't afford Son. But I think that he is fine if you can't afford Son. I don't think he can cover Son. They are such different players in terms of how explosive Son is, and he is the one that's always looking for that shot on the goal, isn't he? Whereas Kulusevski is, I really like him as a player. He is somebody, he just seems like a really clever player because he's quite a tall winger, isn't he? And he's somebody who's not that typical winger, get to the byline and cross it. He's always looking for that kind of cut back in and kind of get the ball in a different way, and I really like him as a player. But I think if you've only got that kind of 6.1 million to spend, I think he's absolutely fine to get in, especially considering he's got the double game week and he plays in the blank game week. I genuinely, I think I will probably be getting him in this week. I think I'm going to sell Ramsey, who also has a game in the blank game week, and get Kulusevski in because I think he's a good player to own moving forward. The other person I want to mention, and they're kind of joint together, Arsenal did look great at the weekend. I thought Saka was unbelievable down the wing. I thought he had such a good game. I thought Martinelli was on the periphery. I've got Martinelli, but he wasn't as involved as I would like him to have been. He had a lovely goal that he scored, but Odegaard is looking a different level at the moment. I watching him play at the weekend, and he's just integral to everything they do. And I think Smith Rowe's going to struggle to get lots of game time at the moment because that three just looks so good, and Lacazette is turning into that Firmino for Arsenal at the moment. So I think Odegaard, if you are looking at that third Arsenal player that you might want to get in, I think for 5.5 million, I think Arteta's been talking about trying to get him closer to goal and trying to have more shots as well. And I really like him. I think he's somebody you can have a look at for 5.5 million. So I think Kulusevski, Saka and Odegaard, it's just a shame we only have 5 midfielder spots, because there's so many midfielders I want to own at the moment. But yeah, those are the three I wanted to have a bit.
Yeah, I mean, for those in my positions, you've got, say, a Ramsey. There's lots to move up to if you've got a spare million. And for those like me as well who've got Bowen, there's lots to move down to or sort of sideways to. Lots of really good options here. And it's really those Game Week 30 players that I'm interested in. Kulusevski, Saka if you don't already own him. Odegaard, these are really good options, I think. So yeah, Seb, you're fairly. I mean, we'll come to our teams later. You're fairly okay for Game Week 29 double game weekers, but any attempted one?
I don't have a goalkeeper, and I would need one transfer to get all outfield players, I think. But I'm not really worried about that.
You've got Dubravka, haven't you?
I can't remember.
I was applauding your Dubravka a couple of weeks ago.
Dubravka, who currently blanks in 30.
Oh, Game Week 30. So we're talking about Game Week 29.
It's good that I was paying attention.
Yeah.
In that case, I probably plan to make about maybe 2 or 3 transfers.
Oh.
I'm a fan of continuing to go for the upside, if you like, here. Luca Dean to Robertson, maybe, which means I can keep James. Okay. Coutinho down to Kulusevski, and then who was the other one? I think probably a Kilman to maybe a Spurs defender. I'm tempted by Kane, but that would probably involve losing Son, maybe for his Spurs teammate. But I'm not sure about that one. It feels like just a poorer EV move in terms of swapping one asset for another, but gaining nothing elsewhere. I maybe prefer adding a Spurs asset and getting a Liverpool double, as opposed to just swapping Spurs for Spurs, even if Kane is better than Son.
Well, let's have a look at blank Game Week 30 players next, because I have Bowen, many people do, and I'm just going to probably just leave him on my bench. And even if he's fit for Game Week 30, obviously I'll be happy to play him. But if he is injured for that, it's then I would look to move, and it's then I think I would like to dip my toe into Leicester, and it's Barnes and Maddison, whichever looks better and fit and raring to go for that. So I'm sort of Bowen's sort of my Leicester midfielder in waiting. But anyway, here are the players that you should own in blank Game Week 30, and it's actually Tony who's the much maligned Tony. 6.5 expected goal involvement. Obviously that includes his penalties, but nevertheless he's on penalties, and Brentford are getting penalties. Kane is next to him, so if you like those open play goals, Harry Kane is your man and looks the best captaincy shout for this one. Costs 12.3 and expected goal involvement of nearly 4. Next down is Lacazette for his goal involvement, expected to be involved in 2.5 goals over the last 4. And then you've got Son, Rafinha, Bamford if he's back, Reguilon, Coutinho, Kulusevski and Saka. So if you've got a healthy sprinkling of these players, and you've maybe got, I don't know, it's quality not quantity basically. I think if you've got 5 or 6 of these lads, then that's going to be worth more than some dross from other teams that are playing. So Wolves, for example, could be quite poor. They might get you 1 or 2 points, whereas the likes of Kane and Son and even Tony could get you much more. But yeah,
even with Villa, like Coutinho and Ramsey don't offer the same prospects, so I wouldn't count them as the same slot in my squad for Game Week 30, for example.
I also think you can do damage to your team moving forward if you try and get too many of these blank Game Week players in, because I think there are going to be people out there that try and take a -4 to get up to 11 when they already had 10 that were absolutely fine, and you're going to have to be taking these players out soon because you're going to be wanting these other players with double game weeks coming forward. So I think I still think 8 or 9 is absolutely fine, like you said, as long as you've got these main players.
Yeah, Yeah, definitely. So these are some of the players that we should be targeting. And the reason I put them up now, sort of getting a week ahead of ourselves, is because whatever players we get in for Game Week 29, we need to think about Game Week 30. So if you can get a player in Game Week 29 who doubles plus actually plays in Game Week 30, so for example some of the Spurs players, all the better. But what you perhaps maybe don't want to do is, well, by all means invest in Everton, but be aware Everton don't play in Game Week 30, and of course they're rubbish. So, but even let's pretend Everton are good, and they still might not be the team to invest in, because you're just not going to get in the end the quantity of games you think you're going to get, because they're not playing in Game Week 30. Let's have a look at another table here. Defences. So looking at the whipping boys last four, once again Norwich obviously at the top still, Leeds still up there as well, but that could go down. You never know.
We're amazing now. We nearly didn't concede.
Yes, nearly. The best defences: Liverpool, Chelsea, Arsenal, City, as you would expect there. Newcastle creeping in towards the bottom, and interestingly Wolves are getting worse and worse each week. They've gradually moved over the last 3 or 4 weeks in this table from like near where Arsenal and Chelsea are to like near where Norwich and Leeds are, so they're just slipping and sliding down, and I don't know whether they're on the beach or they just, I don't know, I don't know what's going on with Wolves, but Kilman is a player I won't have much longer basically. But yeah, what do you think of these in terms of teams to target? I mean, I guess Norwich, are Leeds defence a team to target anymore, Seb, do you think?
I mean, we've had one match. We just don't know. Like, we're not going to improve overnight. I think we saw in the Leicester match that Leeds were moving towards Marsh's ideas, but there was plenty of Bielsa still in there. And of course there was. Marsh has had a week, Bielsa had 4 years. He is trying to make improvements, but as we mentioned earlier with Rafinha, in the past, Jesse Marsh has played it very, very narrow with his teams. Like Rafinha would have played inside the whole match. But in the second half, he allowed a bit more wing play. Harrison went outside a bit. We saw Firpo come forward and get some chances, which he may not in the future if we move more towards Marsh's style. And then similarly, if he is trying to move towards this more ball-orientated press, we saw some of that, but not quite as much as you would expect. You still saw players maybe doing the whole man-to-man every now and again, chasing things as course as they would under Bielsa. So to use that phrase that managers love to use, it's a process. So while I think maybe the edge has been taken off, we're not suddenly a good defence.
Okay.
I think it's absolutely fine to try and target us with reasonably good strikers.
I've got the fixtures for Game 29 on the screen as well, and the one that leaps out is Leeds against Norwich. And one of the reasons I asked about that, because Leeds and Norwich have the worst defences on paper, and they're facing each other. So that could be goals ahoy, hopefully.
If we want to stay up, we need to do very well there, both in terms of results and performance.
Okay, let's have a look at our community team. So as I said at the beginning, we wildcarded this finally after weeks of pressure, particularly from Andy. I wildcarded this team. This is the team for next week, by the way. So we've got 8 to go, including we've captained Rafinha and this, so hopefully should do well there. But we did get James in. It's a 30k red green arrow so far on 67 points with 8 to go, including Rafinha, captain, and just on the outskirts of the top 200k, which we were outside the 300k a while back. So onwards and upwards with this one. We've got bench boost and a free hit to go. We're not going to use the free hit in Game Week 30 because we're fine for that. And we're fine for Game Week 29, as we can see on the screen. So we've got Ramsdale, Rudiger, James, Alexander-Arnold, Ben White, Rafinha, Salah, who we're going to captain because he's got double game week, Kulusevski, Saka.
We're going to triple captain him.
I think we've used the triple captain. I think we used the triple captain.
My mistake.
On Salah before, for his humongous haul of 84 points. Adams and Kane. So this is a really good side, actually. It's very similar to mine, so I would say that, but it's marginally better than mine in that it has triple Arsenal Kulusevski instead of Bowen. And on the bench, got Brozier. I mean, it's so good. We're going to have to bench Brozier against Watford. We've got Dubravka, Ramsey and Kilman. We could bench boost that, but it doesn't scream bench boosty to me.
I think we try and do 33 or 36 maybe for a bench boost. Could you say, well, we've got a free hit and bench boost, did you say?
Got a free hit and a bench boost.
Yeah.
So I think 33 and 36 we should aim for that. And upside chase the hell out of that. But any particular moves you've made? I mean, I feel like we're quite well stocked for the next week or two.
That's a heavy roll. That is. I roll in with 2 free transfers into 30, and then potentially having 2 free transfers for 31. I think is the power play there. Yeah,
I'm looking at weak links. Kilman. I mean, these are the cheapest players in this team though. But I would like to start getting a bit of Leicester in here. Maybe even a Leicester defender to put on the bench, and you never know. But something to think about. We can think about that and just roll with this. Yeah, quite happy to.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people look at this enviously, and they'll say, "Wow, what an amazing looking team." What we're going to do here is we're going to look at our teams. So I'll put the community team back on. We're going to look at our teams, and Andy, with our crackly audio, is going to glean as much questions as he can, and then pose them to me and Seb, and then I'll answer them himself as well. So do you want to do that? Should me and Seb go through our teams while you have a look at the questions, Andy, and then you can talk
lovely stuff.
You can talk about your team.
Check your questions in, guys.
So everyone in the live chat, please fire your questions in, your quick fire questions, and we will address them shortly. So I'll look at my team now. So very similar to the community team, because I got in a bit of a muddle and wildcarded that and mine, and so I've got Ramsdale in goal, Alexander-Arnold, Rudiger and James, Ben Davis, Salah captain, Rafinha, Saka, Kane, Brozier and Adams, and on my bench I've got Dubravka, Kilman, Bowen and Ramsey. I was going to bench boost, but then realised that I didn't really want to, so I'm going to bench boost another time. And I'm quite happy to go with this. I actually sort of want Bowen to be out because I want less bench points.
The last I saw, Bowen was out for a few weeks. I don't know what a few means, but probably is the transfer there.
Well, funny you should say that, because I should have said fewer bench points instead of less. So
meta right now.
So I've corrected my grammatical error. So naughty me. So I've got double Chelsea defence. I've also got double Southampton attack. So I do want double Southampton attack against Watford. One of them's got a score against Watford, but one of them may make way even for a hit in game week 30, because I think I don't really want to have both of them going forward. So I quite like. I think Adams may move on for me in game week 30, but game week 29, I want Robertson, even though he doesn't play in game week 30, and one of Rudiger and James will make way because they don't play in game week 30 anyway. And I've got the likes of Kane, Rafinha. I've got the Arsenal lads already. Bowen if he plays. I've got enough for game week 30 to do me. One of Rudiger and James is going to go. I don't know which one. They've got an audition to remove themselves. So I might end up moving James if he's looking like he's not going to get the minutes. I might move Rudiger if I just want James long term, which is probably more likely. That's me there. Hit booked in, not at some point, and no hit for game week 29. Maybe in game week 30. Seb, let's have a look at your team. Do you want to run through who you got and any plan moves?
I have Dubravka in goal, Trent, James and Kieran at the back. Salah captain at the moment. I haven't hit the triple captain button, but I might. I'm weighing it up. Fun fact on that, Kane has the same fixtures, but the other way around, so Brighton and Arsenal at home, I think, in a few weeks' time. Although I'd still probably back Salah. But I'm just deciding if I want to use it here or maybe a bit later. I then have Son, Coutinho, Rafinha and Saka in a field alongside him. And Lacazette and Brozier up front with a bench of Foster, Jimenez, Kilman
sorry.
And
Your audio is really cutting out for me then. So can you just repeat that last bit again?
oh, I'm sorry. Happily move on if you can't hear me.
No, well, I think we got you there. Just in case anyone didn't pick that up, I'll just very quickly. You got Dubravka, Alexander-Arnold, James, Tierney, Saka, Son, Coutinho, Salah, captain, Rafinha, Kane, and Broja with Foster, Jimenez, Dean, and Kilman. I think Jimenez might. I don't know. Is Jimenez a bit of a regret now for wildcarders?
I don't know, really. I wouldn't say I regret. I may well get rid of him, but happy with the decision at the time.
Okay.
Again, the rest of the team's done fine. So if you take it as an overall wildcard decision, can't complain. In the middle of my chips, so maybe if I was going to get like a Vardy or a Kane or something, I'd probably lose Jimenez, but I'm not too stressed about it at the moment.
Okay. Okay. So there's our teams there. Andy, have you got some questions for us? Or before you do that, we'll look at your team. Obviously, I'll put your team up. So do you want to go through your team and tell us who you got on any moves?
Yeah. Rudiger, Trent and Robertson, double game week. So we've got Rafinha and Mopé and Kane with both double game weeks as well.
Okay.
Either I'm going to roll it or I'm going to get Kulusevski in for Ramsey and bench Mopé. I'm not sure yet. But rolling seems quite a nice idea as well.
Okay, and just for the audio was cutting out a bit there. We are going to draw the Scoutcast to a close soon, just because there is an audio issue and we're not quite sure what that is. But for the benefit of those who might not pick that up, we got Rams. You got Rams. Andy's got Ramsdale, Rudiger, Alexander-Arnold, Robertson, Rafinha, Martinelli, Saka, Salah, captain, Kane, Broja, and Mopé. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 double game week players already. And on the bench, Sanchez. So room to bench Sanchez, Ramsey, Alt-Nouri, and Luca Dean. So looking pretty good. Let's see how we do with the audio. With you asking us some questions, Andy. We'll take it from there. And we may have to abort, but let's see.
Okay. How quickly we can do it. Right. Seb, Disaster Wheels says Kane.
Salah.
So, we're getting the game week 29 and moving ahead for doubles.
I'm gonna say the audio is pretty much completely cut out for both of you. I'm just going to try something.
We can hear each other, which is odd.
Okay.
I can hear Seb perfectly.
Yeah, we're fine. Me and Andy just have a chat.
Okay. Okay. Can you hear me now? And
I don't think the chat are having a good time.
No,
Should we maybe wrap it there?
yeah, I think we're gonna have to. I think we're gonna have to do this. They can hear me annoyingly. I and they can't hear you, but you can hear each other. So we have to muddle through with that. So what I'm going to say is, yes, we're going to have to wrap this up. So apologies everyone for those quick fire questions. Hopefully we're going to get this sorted next week. I've got no idea what this issue is to do with the audio, but I do apologise for that. And thank you for bearing with us. Hopefully we've given you some food for thought about the players to go. And
Joe, the chat are saying it's fine now. If you wanted to try it, I'll leave it up to you.
Okay. This okay. Give it a go then. Andy, fire away with some questions.
Oh God! Right, Joe. Question: do I get a Chelsea defender or do I get Doherty?
If there's a choice between the two, I would get Doherty because he just plays more. He's got more games and he's cheaper, and you can get Chelsea. I wouldn't get a Chelsea defender now because last week was the time to get a Chelsea defender.
Cool. So that was a very good, quick answer. Seb, Imtiaz Ahmed says, is benching Broja going to end up in tears?
Oh, that depends on the rest of your team, but yes. Hopefully,
Joe, Matt, yes. Joe, Matt Francis says, does taking a hit for each double game week player who also play in 30. Is that a good move? Oh, no. Does taking a hit for a double game week player who plays in 30 a good move? Yeah. Seb, Haydar Hamra says, hello, guys. Would you change Jota for Kulusevski for a -4?
No, not for a -4.
Ooh. Joe, FPL Gaza says, prawn cocktail or cheese and onion?
Oh, prawn cocktail skips, but cheese and onion walkers.
That's not the short answer. Seb, Sam says, is Dean worth keeping or should we ship him this week?
Get rid.
Ooh. Who else we got? I think I'll only do one or two more. No, I think we're going to stop there.
Okay, I think my audio's gone. So, Andy, can you hear me?
I can.
Although people say they can hear me now. So, can people in live chat say that they can hear me? It doesn't matter if you can't see me. The camera's frozen. But if you can hear me, because I need to say the goodbyes, but...
just kill it. Just kill it.
Okay. Oh. Right. Okay. So, what I'm just in case people can't hear me, Andy, can you just take over in saying goodbye to everyone? I'm going to say goodbye now in case anyone can still hear me.
Lovely. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for joining us tonight. And obviously, we will be with you again next week. We hope all your arrows agree moving forward. From all of us here and from me, I have been Andy.
I've been Seb.
And we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
And a happy International Women's Day.